The cake hit the wall with a wet slap, pink frosting dripping down like blood. My mother-in-law's face contorted as she towered over my sobbing 2-year-old daughter. Her finger jabbed the air inches from the child's face. "You brat! This is why I hate spoiled kids," she screamed, specks of saliva landing on my baby's cheeks. Something snapped inside me, not like a twig, but like a dam bursting. The room temperature seemed to rise 10 degrees as blood rushed to my face. My hands, once shaking with fear of confrontation, now trembled with rage. I could hear my own heartbeat drowning out the birthday party chatter that had gone silent around us. My daughter's terrified wails pierced the silence as I lunged forward, scooping her into my arms. The feeling of her tiny body trembling against mine ignited something primal, a fierce, protective fury I'd never experienced before. "She's 2, you psycho," I hissed, backing away from the woman who had tormented us for months. My mother-in-law's face twisted into an ugly sneer. "Ugh! Worst grandchild ever!" she spat, as though a toddler could possibly deserve such venom. My husband stood frozen nearby, his eyes darting between us like a cornered animal, choosing silence over protection. "My name is Rachel. I'm 34 and an office worker. This is the story of how I rebuilt my life after discovering that some family bonds are meant to be broken." I'd met Owen 3 years earlier on a dating app. He was charming, attentive, and seemed like the perfect partner. When our daughter Lily was born, he proved to be a hands-on father, changing diapers and taking night shifts without complaint. I thought I'd found my forever person. What I didn't realize was that there was already someone else occupying that space in his life. His mother, Vivian. At first, the signs were subtle. "How's dinner?" he'd ask, taking a bite of the pasta I'd spent an hour preparing. "Good," he'd say after chewing thoughtfully, "but my mom's is richer." I'd smile and nod, making mental notes to adjust my recipes. I even called his mother once, asking for cooking tips, wanting to please him. She'd seemed pleasant enough then, giving vague instructions that never quite worked out. Then came the souvenirs. Every business trip, every weekend getaway, he'd text me. What should I get my mom? Never my parents, just his mom. I told myself it was sweet how close they were, how wrong I was. The real trouble started 6 months ago. Owen came home looking unusually serious. "We should move in with my mom," he announced without preamble. I looked up from my laptop, certain I'd misheard. "What? Why?" "My parents are divorcing. Dad cheated." His voice cracked slightly. "I can't leave Mom alone. Plus, she can help with Lily." It made practical sense. I could return to work sooner with built-in childcare. And Owen swore his mother adored me. "She thinks you're the daughter she never had," he insisted. Within weeks, Vivian moved into our spacious 2-bedroom apartment. The moment Owen left for work that first morning, her mask slipped. She surveyed our living room with a dismissive sniff. "This apartment is too nice for you," she remarked, running a finger along our bookshelf. "Excuse me," I said, nearly dropping Lily's breakfast plate. "You only have this life because of my son," she hissed, her voice suddenly venomous. "Don't forget that." I maintained my composure, reminding myself she was going through a divorce. "Owen works hard, and I'm grateful for everything we have," I replied evenly. She smirked. "At least you're obedient. That's good." From that day forward, nothing I did met her standards. She critiqued my cooking. "Who puts soy sauce on eggs? Use ketchup." My parenting. "The baby needs a sweater. Are you trying to make her sick?" Even my bathing habits. "This bath water is weak. Boil it next time. Where's my after-bath ice cream? You should know by now." She lounged around our apartment all day while I juggled remote work, a toddler, and her ridiculous demands. I'd hoped she would help with Lily, but she'd play with her for 5 minutes before getting bored and handing her back, usually when she needed a diaper change. The worst part was watching Owen transform in her presence. My confident, reasonable husband became a simpering boy around her. "How was work, honey?" She'd coo at dinner, ignoring me completely. "Rough," he'd sigh. My boss was stressed about deadlines and took it out on the team. Her eyes would widen dramatically. "That's workplace harassment. Should I call your CEO?" Owen would blink, momentarily confused. "Mom, it's just a bad day." "My angel is too forgiving," she'd declare, clutching her chest like he'd announced he'd discovered the cure for cancer. I nearly choked the first time I heard this exchange. Angel? He was a 34-year-old man who still wanted Mommy to fight his battles. To preserve my sanity, I enrolled Lily in daycare and returned to the office full-time. When I announced my decision, Vivian exploded. "Why do you need to work? Don't I deserve some peace and quiet?" "You'll have the house to yourself," I pointed out sweetly. That silenced her temporarily. "Fine," she huffed, "but keep this place spotless." Which brings us back to Lily's birthday party. After witnessing Vivian scream in my daughter's face, something inside me changed. The fear and hesitation that had kept me compliant evaporated, replaced by cold clarity. "Says the woman who throws tantrums over bathwater," I snapped, still holding my whimpering daughter. Vivian's face turned an alarming shade of purple. "What did you say?" "Pack your bags," I growled, my voice dropping to a dangerous register I barely recognized. "You're moving out. Today." Owen finally spoke up, but not as I'd hoped. "Mom's right," he said quietly. "You're overreacting." I stared at him, disbelief coursing through me. "Our daughter is crying and you're defending her?" He shrugged, a gesture so dismissive it felt like a physical blow. "We can have another kid. I only have one mother." The room went silent. In that moment, I saw with perfect clarity what the rest of my life would look like if I stayed. Endless subjugation to a woman who hated me and a husband who would never, ever choose me. "You're disgusting," I whispered. "Don't talk to my son like that," Vivian screeched. "Neither of you are welcome here. Get out," she demanded, pointing toward the door. I froze, momentarily confused. This house? Then understanding dawned. "You're right," I said, my voice suddenly calm. "We're leaving." I grabbed Lily's hand and headed for the bedroom, where I began throwing clothes into a suitcase. Owen followed, panic finally registering on his face. "Wait, you don't have to—" "Oh, but I do," I interrupted, not bothering to look at him as I continued packing. "Enjoy your cake date," I added, zipping the suitcase closed. His mother smirked from the doorway. "Good riddance." 3 days later, I sat in my lawyer's office, ignoring the 27 missed calls lighting up my phone as I slid divorce papers across the polished desk. When Owen finally reached me, he sounded relieved rather than heartbroken. "So the apartment stays with me, right? You left voluntarily." About that," I said sweetly. "You'll need to start paying rent, 150,000 yen monthly." "Are you insane? That's triple the actual—" "Actually," I cut in, enjoying this moment more than I probably should have, "it's my apartment. Bought it with stock profits before we met. Surprise." Dead silence followed then. "You own it?" "Yep. Pay up or I'll sell it tomorrow." "Where will my mother live?" he wailed, his voice cracking. "Not my problem," I sang, hanging up with a satisfaction so intense it felt almost physical. My lawyer later told me Owen looked like a zombie during negotiations, drowning in child support calculations and his mother's incessant demands. Their unbreakable bond apparently shattered when she realized he couldn't afford her lifestyle anymore. During mediation, they screamed, "This is your fault," at each other repeatedly, like characters in a bad soap opera. Meanwhile, I sold the apartment for a substantial profit, secured Lily's college fund, and moved in with my genuinely supportive parents. Now I work, raise my amazing daughter, and sleep peacefully without midnight demands for hotter bathwater. As for love, maybe someday. But first, I'm teaching my daughter what real strength looks like. And I've made a solemn promise to myself that I'll never, ever become the monster I left behind. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles. Zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one. My throat closed as if gripped by invisible hands when I heard the words cut through the Thanksgiving air. $40 million, Dad announced, standing tall at the head of our mahogany dining table. And your mother and I plan to enjoy every penny of it. Time seemed to freeze as my siblings' faces transformed, hope collapsing into disbelief. My sister Olivia's champagne glass trembled slightly in her manicured fingers. My brother Nate's jaw tightened as blood rushed to his cheeks, turning them the same crimson as Mom's cranberry sauce. I said nothing, just pressed my fingertips against the heavy linen napkin in my lap, feeling the embroidered Martinez family crest, the same one emblazoned on every piece of equipment owned by Martinez Construction, the company our father had built from nothing over 3 decades, the company my siblings had always assumed they would inherit without ever lifting a hammer. My name is Rachel. I'm 35 and a finance executive. This is the story of how I reclaim my family's legacy while teaching my siblings the true meaning of earning your place. The revelation had started innocently enough. Dad had just finished carving the turkey, the rich aroma mingling with the scent of fresh pine from the centerpiece. "Before we dig into this beautiful meal your mother prepared," he'd said, still holding the carving knife like a scepter, "I have some important family news to share." Nate and Olivia had straightened in their chairs, their attention suddenly razor-sharp. They'd always been this way, indifferent to Dad's business until money was mentioned, then instantly alert like predators scenting prey. "As you all know, Martinez Construction has been our family's livelihood for nearly 3 decades. Dad continued. "I built this company from nothing, working 16-hour days, taking risks, making sacrifices so that all of you could have better lives. Dad, you've built something incredible. The whole city knows the Martinez name." Nate nodded solemnly. "That's right," Dad had agreed, his voice carrying the unmistakable pride of a self-made man. "But I'm 71 years old, and your mother and I want to enjoy our retirement while we're still healthy enough to travel and spend time with our grandchildren. Are you finally ready to let Nate and me take over operations?" Olivia had leaned forward eagerly, diamond earrings catching the light. Dad's expression had shifted then, becoming more serious. "Actually, we've decided to sell Martinez Construction entirely. We've received an offer that's too good to pass up." The room had gone silent except for the soft classical music playing from the sound system and the distant hum of traffic outside. "Sell?" Nate's voice had cracked slightly. "Dad, this is our family legacy. This is what we've all been working toward." "Nate, you've been working in marketing for a tech startup for the past 5 years, Dad countered. "Olivia, you're a graphic designer with your own freelance business. Neither of you has shown any real interest in construction or business management." That was true, but it wasn't the whole truth. The real truth was that both Nate and Olivia had been counting on inheriting Martinez Construction as their retirement plan. They assumed they could hire managers to run the actual business while they collected profits from Dad's lifetime of work. "But we could learn," Olivia protested, her voice rising slightly. "We could bring fresh perspectives to the business, maybe expand into new markets." "Olivia, you've never set foot on a construction site," Dad replied, his voice sharpening. "You don't know the difference between a load-bearing wall and a partition. You think business management means posting on social media and designing pretty logos." Dad's frustration was palpable. Years of disappointment with children who'd taken his success for granted while building their own careers far from the family business. "The truth is, neither of you has ever shown the slightest interest in Martinez Construction, except as a source of financial security. Well, I'm not going to let 30 years of hard work be destroyed by people who see it as an easy paycheck." "Dad, that's not fair. We're your children. We deserve to inherit what you've built." Nate's face had reddened with indignation. "You deserve nothing," Dad said firmly. "Inheritance is earned, not given, and neither of you has earned the right to control Martinez Construction." Olivia's eyes had welled with tears. "So, you're just going to sell to strangers? People who don't care about our family's reputation or our employees?" "I'm selling to people who will preserve what I've built and protect our employees' jobs," Dad countered. "Summit Enterprises has an excellent reputation in the industry, and they've committed to maintaining our current workforce and management structure." Nate and Olivia had exchanged glances then, their expressions shifting as they calculated their potential windfall. The vultures circling, calculating the spoils. "How much?" Nate had asked bluntly. Dad had smiled, pride evident in every line of his weathered face. $40 million. Summit Enterprises made an offer that values Martinez Construction at exactly what it's worth. The equipment, the contracts, the reputation, everything. $40 million, Dad, that's incredible. Olivia had actually clapped her hands together like a child receiving a gift. "It is incredible," Dad agreed, "and your mother and I plan to enjoy every penny of it. We're buying a retirement home in Scottsdale, taking that European river cruise we've always talked about, and making sure we have enough money to live comfortably for the rest of our lives." The implication couldn't have been clearer. Nate and Olivia wouldn't be seeing any of the $40 million. "But Dad," Nate protested, his voice taking on a desperate edge, "surely you're planning to leave something for your children." "I'm leaving you the same thing my father left me," Dad replied evenly, "the opportunity to make your own way in the world. The same opportunity I had when I started Martinez Construction with $5,000 in savings and a used pickup truck." Throughout this entire conversation, I had remained silent, watching my siblings' faces cycle through confusion, hope, disappointment, and growing anger. Finally, I decided it was time to speak. "Dad, who exactly is Summit Enterprises?" He turned toward me with surprise, as if he'd forgotten I was at the table. Throughout my adult life, I'd been the quiet sister who worked in finance and rarely participated in family discussions about business or money. Summit Enterprises is a commercial construction and development company based in Phoenix, he explained. They specialize in acquiring established regional contractors and helping them expand into new markets. "And you're confident they'll take good care of Martinez Construction?" "Absolutely. I've done my due diligence. They have an excellent track record, solid financing, and a commitment to maintaining the quality standards that have made Martinez Construction successful." I set down my wine glass carefully, feeling the weight of the moment pressing against my chest. A smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. "Dad, I have something to tell you about Summit Enterprises." "What's that, Mija?" The Spanish term of endearment he'd used since my childhood felt especially poignant now. "I am Summit Enterprises." The silence that followed was absolute. My mother's fork clattered against her plate. Olivia's mouth fell open. Nate froze with his water glass halfway to his lips. "What do you mean?" Dad asked slowly, his bushy eyebrows drawing together. "I mean, I own Summit Enterprises. I founded the company 3 years ago, and I'm the one who made the $40 million offer to purchase Martinez Construction." Nate stared at me like I'd suddenly started speaking in tongues. "That's impossible, Rachel. You work in accounting or something." "I work in private equity and commercial development," I corrected him. "Summit Enterprises is my holding company for construction and real estate investments across the Southwest." Olivia was shaking her head, blonde hair swishing across her shoulders. "Rachel, this isn't funny. We're talking about $40 million. "Yes, we are. $40 million that I'm paying to Dad for a company that I've been quietly studying and analyzing for the past 2 years. I reached into my purse and pulled out a folder containing the preliminary purchase agreements, all bearing my signature as the managing member of Summit Enterprises, LLC. Dad, when Summit Enterprises contacted Martinez Construction about a potential acquisition, did you ever ask who owned the company?" Dad's face had gone pale, the realization dawning slowly. "The lawyers said it was a private company based in Phoenix. They provided financial statements, references, proof of funds. All legitimate," I confirmed. "Summit Enterprises is indeed based in Phoenix, where I moved 4 years ago to be closer to the commercial development market in the Southwest. We have $340 million in assets under management and specialize in acquiring family-owned construction companies that are ready for succession planning." I stood up and walked to the window overlooking the backyard where Dad had taught me to use power tools when I was 12, where I'd learned about construction by helping him build the deck and the garden shed that still stood near the back fence. The difference is that Summit Enterprises isn't owned by strangers who don't care about Martinez Construction's legacy. It's owned by someone who's been watching Dad build this company since she was old enough to wear a hard hat and carry a tool belt. Nate was frantically pulling out his phone, probably trying to look up Summit Enterprises online. "But Rachel," Mom said quietly, "you never showed any interest in the construction business. You went to college, got your finance degree, moved to Phoenix." "Mom, I got my finance degree specifically so I could understand the business side of construction. I moved to Phoenix because it's one of the fastest growing construction markets in the country, and I wanted to learn how successful development companies operate." I turned back to face the table, looking at family members who'd spent years thinking they knew exactly who I was and what I was capable of. For the past 8 years, I've been building Summit Enterprises into a regional powerhouse. I started with a small inheritance from Grandpa Martinez and the profits from selling my first condo, about $120,000 in total. I leveraged that into small development projects, reinvested every penny of profit, and gradually built the company through strategic partnerships and careful risk management. The explanation of my initial funding seemed to address an unspoken question in their eyes. We've acquired 12 construction companies, developed over $200 million in commercial real estate, and established ourselves as one of the most respected names in Southwest construction. The numbers seemed to hit them like physical blows. "But why didn't you tell us?" Olivia asked, her voice small. "Because every time I tried to talk about my work, you changed the subject or made jokes about me, playing with numbers, while the real work was being done by people like Dad. You made it clear that you saw me as the sister who'd abandoned the family business to push papers around in an office." That was true. Throughout my 20s and early 30s, family gatherings had been exercises in gentle condescension. Nate and Olivia would update everyone on their creative careers, while I was dismissed as someone who'd chosen the boring world of finance over more interesting pursuits. 2 years ago, I continued, I started hearing rumors that Dad was considering retirement. My contacts in the industry mentioned he'd been talking to succession planning consultants, and I knew it was time to make my move. Dad nodded in confirmation. I did speak with several advisors, though I never told the family. I wanted to have a solid plan in place first. So I began conducting a formal analysis of Martinez Construction, the financials, the market position, the growth potential, the succession challenges. Dad was listening intently now, his business instincts overriding his personal shock. "What did you find?" "I found a well-run company with excellent relationships, solid contracts, and a reputation for quality work. I also found a business owner approaching retirement age with no clear succession plan, and 2 children who'd never demonstrated any interest in actually running a construction company." Nate started to protest, but I held up my hand. "Nate, in 5 years of family dinners, you've never once asked Dad about bidding processes, project management, safety regulations, or client relationships. Olivia, you've never inquired about equipment maintenance, workforce development, or industry trends. You've both been content to let Dad handle the boring business stuff while you pursued your own interests." "But we always assumed," Olivia began. "You assumed you'd inherit a successful business without having to understand how it actually works," I interrupted. "You assumed Dad would either run it forever or hire managers to run it for you while you collected profits." I walked back to the table and sat down, folding my hands in front of me. "Dad, the offer from Summit Enterprises isn't just about buying your company. It's about preserving what you've built and growing it into something even bigger. Martinez Construction would become the flagship acquisition for Summit's expansion into the Texas market." "Texas?" Dad's eyes lit up with interest. "We've identified opportunities for commercial development projects worth over $150 million in Dallas, Austin, and Houston. Martinez Construction's reputation and expertise would be the foundation for establishing Summit's presence in those markets." I pulled out another set of documents from my folder. But more than that, the acquisition would create opportunities for Martinez Construction's current employees to advance into management roles with a larger organization. Your project managers could become regional directors. Your supervisors could oversee multiple job sites. Your administrative staff could develop expertise in areas like business development and strategic planning. Dad was nodding slowly, his businessman's mind processing the possibilities. And the Martinez name would be preserved? Summit Enterprises operates as a holding company, but our acquisitions maintain their local identity and reputation. Martinez Construction would continue to be Martinez Construction, just with access to larger projects and greater resources. Nate was staring at his phone screen, apparently having found Summit Enterprises' website. Rachel, this says Summit Enterprises has completed over $800 million in development projects. That's correct. And you own this company? I founded it, and I own 78% of the equity. My partners own the remaining 22%. Olivia was doing mental calculations, her lips moving slightly. Rachel, if the company has done $800 million in projects, my personal net worth is approximately $240 million, not counting the Martinez Construction acquisition. The silence returned, heavier this time. $240 million? Mom whispered. That's the current valuation, yes. It fluctuates with market conditions and project completions, but that's the approximate number. Dad sat back in his chair, looking at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Not the indulgent smile he'd always given his youngest daughter, but the respectful attention he reserved for serious business discussions. Rachel, if you own Summit Enterprises, why are you paying full market value for Martinez Construction? You could have just told me who you were and we could have worked out a family arrangement. It was a good question and one I'd anticipated. Because I want to earn Martinez Construction, not inherit it. I want to prove that Summit Enterprises is the right choice for your legacy based on our capabilities, not our family relationship. I looked around the table at faces that were still processing this new reality. Also, because paying full market value ensures that you and Mom have complete financial security for your retirement. You've earned the right to enjoy the fruits of 30 years of hard work. Nate was scrolling through more information on his phone. Dad, Summit Enterprises has won awards from the Arizona Construction Association. They built that new medical complex in Scottsdale that was featured in Architectural Digest, and the mixed-use development in Tempe that won the Sustainability Award last year, Olivia added, apparently having looked up the same information. Dad was studying my face with new attention. Rachel, how long have you been planning this? Honestly, since I was 16 and you let me help manage the payroll during summer break. I've always known I wanted to be part of the construction industry, but I wanted to understand all aspects of it. The finance, the development, the strategic planning, not just the operational side. Why didn't you tell us? Because I wanted to prove myself independently first. If I told you 8 years ago that I was starting a construction company, what would you have said? Dad considered this. I probably would have told you it was too difficult for someone without field experience. I would have worried about you competing in a male-dominated industry. And you would have offered to help, which would have made every success look like family favoritism rather than earned achievement. Nate set down his phone and looked at me directly. Rachel, I have to ask, what happens to Olivia and me in all this? What do you mean? I mean, you're buying Dad's company for $40 million. You're worth hundreds of millions of dollars. We're your siblings, but apparently we're also, what? Cut out of the family business entirely. It was a fair question, and I'd been thinking about it for months. Nate, what do you want to happen? I don't know. I never expected this. I looked at Olivia. What about you? She was quiet for a moment, then said, I guess I always assumed I'd inherit a third of whatever Dad built. Now I'm realizing that what Dad built was the opportunity to build something myself, and I never took advantage of that opportunity. That's exactly right, Dad said firmly. Rachel understood that lesson and acted on it. You two didn't. But it's not too late, I said. Summit Enterprises is always looking for talented people who understand our industry and our values. If you're genuinely interested in learning the construction business, there could be opportunities for you. You mean, working for you? Nate's eyes lit up. Working with me, learning the business from the ground up the same way I did, starting in entry-level positions and proving that you can contribute value before advancing to greater responsibilities. What kind of entry-level positions? Olivia asked. Project coordination, client relations, administrative support, safety compliance, all the foundational work that teaches you how construction projects actually get completed. I could see them processing this offer, trying to decide whether they were willing to work their way up through a business they'd expected to inherit. The difference is that Summit Enterprises can offer you opportunities that Martinez Construction never could. Larger projects, diverse markets, advanced training programs, clear advancement paths based on performance rather than family relationships. Dad was nodding approvingly. Rachel, that's exactly the right approach. They need to earn their place in the business world, just like you did. Over the following months, the transition from family drama to business partnership was gradual but successful. The acquisition of Martinez Construction went through without complications, and Dad was impressed with Summit's professionalism throughout the due diligence process. Nate decided to take a position with Summit Enterprises as a project coordinator, starting at entry level, but with the advantage of Dad's mentorship and my strategic guidance. He discovered that he actually enjoyed the problem-solving aspects of construction management and had a natural talent for client relations. Olivia chose to continue with her design business, but began specializing in commercial and residential development projects, often working as a subcontractor for Summit's marketing and branding needs. She found ways to combine her creative skills with business strategy that benefited both her independent practice and the larger family enterprise. Most importantly, Dad found that retirement wasn't about completely stepping away from Martinez Construction, but about transitioning from daily operations to strategic advising. He remained involved as a consultant to Summit Enterprises, helping with client relationships and mentoring the next generation of project managers. Mom and Dad did purchase their retirement home in Scottsdale as planned, and they took their European river cruise that summer. The photos they shared of their journey through Germany, Austria, and Hungary showed them happier and more relaxed than they'd been in years, freed from the constant pressure of running a business, but still connected to its future growth. The Thanksgiving dinner that had started with, "You're getting nothing," had ended with all of us getting something more valuable than inheritance. The opportunity to build genuine professional relationships based on mutual respect and earned achievement. 6 months after the acquisition, in May of the following year, we held the first annual Martinez Construction Employee Appreciation Dinner at the same country club where Dad had celebrated major contracts for 3 decades. But this time, the celebration was bigger, recognizing not just the completion of successful projects, but the successful transition to a new phase of growth and opportunity. As I stood at the podium looking out at employees who had become partners in a larger vision, at family members who had evolved from entitled heirs to contributing professionals, at Dad, whose pride was now based on what we were building together rather than what he was protecting alone, I realized that the best family businesses aren't the ones that get passed down unchanged. They're the ones that evolve with each generation, growing stronger by combining tradition with innovation, preserving values while embracing new possibilities. The announcement that had seemed like an ending had actually been a beginning. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one. My stomach lurched as the words on my screen burned into my retinas. I blinked hard, hoping the Instagram post would somehow change when I opened my eyes. It didn't. There they were. My parents, my younger brother Quentin, aunts, uncles, cousins, all raising champagne flutes on a yacht against a backdrop of turquoise Bahamian waters. "Nothing beats family time in paradise," read Quentin's smug caption. 3 hours earlier, I'd canceled the biggest client pitch of my career because my mother had called in tears. telling me my grandfather had fallen and was in critical condition. Now I stood in my grandfather's perfectly intact living room, watching him lower his newspaper with confusion in his eyes. "Rebecca, what are you doing here?" he asked, setting down his coffee cup. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me as I held up my phone, showing him the family photo posted 19 minutes ago. "They told me you were dying." "My name is Rebecca. I'm 32 and a financial planner. This is the story of how I reclaimed not just my inheritance, but my entire family legacy." My grandfather's face darkened as he leaned forward. "Your mother asked me to lie to you, said it would keep things peaceful if you stayed behind." His voice trembled with barely contained anger. "I refused. I would never do that to you." My throat tightened as the pieces clicked together. I'd thought we were all going on this family vacation. I'd even requested time off work. Then last minute, they'd postponed it. Only they hadn't postponed anything. They just hadn't wanted me there. Why would they? The question died on my lips as my grandfather reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a thick manila folder. "Because of this," he said, sliding it across the coffee table. "I've been tracking it for months. I was waiting for the right time to tell you, but..." I opened the folder with shaking hands. Bank statements, trust fund reports, legal documents with highlighted sections. My eyes caught on numbers that made my lungs constrict. $250,000 withdrawn for Quentin's executive MBA. $180,000 for Quentin's downtown condo deposit. $125,000 for Quentin's failed tech startup. The trust fund my grandfather had established, $5 million to be split equally between Quentin and me, had been systematically drained and funneled almost entirely to my brother. "There's more," my grandfather said, his voice dropping lower. "Your father is finalizing paperwork to transfer full ownership of Wilson Hotels to Quentin. The business was meant for both of you. They're cutting you out completely." A strange metallic taste filled my mouth. Wilson Hotels, our family's chain of boutique hotels spanning the East Coast, the legacy I'd spent years preparing to help lead. I'd gotten a finance degree, worked at investment firms, built a client portfolio that would give me relevant experience. All while Quentin partied through college and bounced between jobs my father created for him. "How can they do this?" I whispered, fingers trembling as I flipped through more documents. The trust was for both of us. "Your parents gained control as trustees. When I stepped back 5 years ago," my grandfather explained, regret etching deep lines around his eyes. "I trusted your father to do right by both of you. I was wrong." My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Hope you're taking good care of Dad. We're thinking of you both." The false concern made my stomach turn. All those years I'd worked overtime, saved every penny, and built my career from scratch, hoping they would finally see my worth. Meanwhile, they'd been methodically erasing me from the family's future, using my grandfather's name to manipulate me while sailing off to paradise with my brother. "You don't have to let this happen, Rebecca," my grandfather said, his voice stronger now. "You're smarter than they think." I looked up at him, something cold and clear crystallizing in my chest. "You're right. I don't." I called my Aunt Vivian that night. She'd walked away from the family business years ago after a falling out with my father, her younger brother. I still had her number saved from the last family funeral we'd both attended, though we hadn't spoken since. When she answered on the second ring, her voice carried the slight rasp I remembered from childhood. "Rebecca, is everything all right?" "No," I said. "But it will be. I need your help." 2 hours later, Aunt Vivian sat at my grandfather's dining room table, flipping through the documents with practiced precision. Her reading glasses perched on her nose as she marked pages with colorful tabs. "This is fraud, Rebecca," she said, tapping a particularly damning bank statement. "They've been siphoning your inheritance into offshore accounts. The timing of these transfers suggests they're planning to disappear with what's left." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" "These patterns indicate preparation for leaving the country, consolidating assets, moving money to the Caymans." Her eyes met mine. "We need to act fast." For years, I'd swallowed my pain, hoping my parents would eventually see me as their daughter, not just an afterthought. But now I saw them clearly. People who would rather destroy me than share what was rightfully mine. "What's our first move?" I asked. Aunt Vivian smiled, a sharp gleam in her eye. "We hit them where it hurts, their precious reputation." The Wilson name opened doors in Atlanta. My parents spent decades building an image as generous philanthropists, successful hoteliers, perfect parents. That facade was their most prized possession. The next morning, I sat with Aunt Vivian and my grandfather at his kitchen table, my phone in hand. I opened Instagram, my fingers hovering over Quentin's latest post. He stood on the bow of a yacht, champagne in hand, #blessed. I started typing, my hands steady despite the fire in my veins. That blessed life was built on my stolen future. Funny how our parents lied about our grandfather's health to keep me from the family vacation. Funnier still, how they took my $2.5 million trust fund and the Wilson hotels meant for both of us and gave it all to you. They thought I'd never find out. I hit post and waited. The notifications exploded within minutes. Friends, distant relatives, business associates, all stunned, flooding the comments with questions. Is this true? What's happening with Wilson hotels? The truth spread like wildfire through Atlanta's tight social circles. My phone rang almost immediately. Quentin. "Rebecca, what the hell?" he hissed, his voice low like he was hiding from our parents. "Take that post down. You're making Mom and Dad look awful." I let the silence stretch, making him squirm. "Awful," I finally said, my voice calm but sharp. "They lied to me, Quentin. They stole my money, my future. And you went along with it." "You don't understand," he sputtered. "It's complicated." "No," I cut him off. "It's actually very simple. You took what was mine." My mother called next, her voice ice cold. "Rebecca, delete that post immediately. You're embarrassing us." I laughed, bitter and raw. "Embarrassing you? You faked grandfather's injury, gave Quentin my inheritance, and planned to hand him the business. You embarrassed yourselves." "We did what was best for the family," she snapped. "Quentin was ready for that responsibility. You weren't." Her words stung, but I was done letting them hurt me. "You're wrong," I said, "and you'll see just how wrong soon enough." By evening, the fallout was unstoppable. Several close family friends who worked in media saw my post and began calling me for details. After verifying the evidence with Aunt Vivian, they ran stories about potential financial misconduct at Wilson hotels. Employees, long silenced, started sharing stories of unpaid wages and questionable business practices. My grandfather contacted old business associates, and investors began pulling back, spooked by the scandal. Aunt Vivian filed emergency legal papers to freeze the hotel chain's transfer to Quentin. The paperwork wasn't finalized yet, but it was close. Too close. If we could prove fraud, we could stop it completely. That night, my grandfather handed me one last document, his eyes steady on mine. "This is the original contract I signed with your father," he said. "It gave him control of Wilson hotels, but there's a clause no one paid attention to." I read it, my heart racing. The clause stated that if dishonesty or misconduct was proven, control could be revoked and returned to the original signatory, my grandfather. "This is our ace," I said, looking up at him. Aunt Vivian nodded, her smile fierce. "Let's finish this." The next morning, after Aunt Vivian made several calls to her contacts at the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, I walked into Wilson Hotel's downtown headquarters, my grandfather's contract tucked under my arm. I used my old employee access card from when I had interned there during college. My father had never bothered to deactivate it. For years, I'd felt like an outsider in my own family, but today, I was taking back what was mine. I pushed open the door to my father's corner office without knocking. He and my mother were there, frantically feeding documents into a shredder. They froze when they saw me. My father's face flushed dark red. "You don't belong here, Rebecca," he snapped. I held up the contract, my voice steady. "Actually, I do." His eyes narrowed, but I caught the flicker of fear in them. I stepped forward, placing the contract on his desk. "You missed something in this agreement, Dad," I said. "The clause that says if you're caught lying or stealing, you lose everything." He snatched the paper, scanning it, his jaw tightening with each line. My mother gripped the edge of his desk, her face pale. "Rebecca, let's talk about this," she said, her voice shaky. "We're family." "Family?" I raised an eyebrow. "Where was family when you gave Quentin my trust fund, when you planned to hand him the business I've worked my entire life to be part of?" Quentin burst in, red-faced and panting. "You're destroying everything, Rebecca. Why can't you just let it go?" I turned to him, my voice level. "Let it go? You lived off my money, Quentin. You took my future without a second thought." "You're just jealous," he shot back. I stepped closer, meeting his gaze directly. "Number, I'm done letting you all walk over me." The office door swung open again. 2 federal agents entered, followed by Aunt Vivian and my grandfather. Thanks to my aunt's legal connections and my grandfather's detailed financial records, the agents had agreed to meet us here after reviewing the evidence overnight. "What is this?" my father shouted, standing up so quickly his chair crashed against the wall. One agent, a tall woman with close-cropped hair, stepped forward. "Mr. Wilson, we have evidence of financial fraud and unauthorized offshore transfers. You and your wife are under investigation, and we have a warrant to seize these documents." My mother gasped, grabbing my father's arm. "Do something," she hissed. But he stood frozen, the contract still in his hand. I pulled out another folder, copies of every bank statement, trust fund report, and transfer my grandfather had collected. "This shows you took $2.5 million that was legally mine," I said, placing it beside the contract. "The money is probably gone, but the hotels aren't. Not yet." My father's eyes burned with rage. "You think you've won?" I met his gaze without flinching. "I'm not trying to win. I'm taking back what's mine." Quentin stared at me, mouth hanging open, finally realizing the game was over. The weeks that followed transformed everything. The investigation moved swiftly, with Aunt Vivian presenting evidence like a master strategist, laying out every lie, every stolen dollar. The judge ruled that the hotel chain transfer to Quentin was fraudulent and void. The court did something I never expected. It awarded me full ownership of Wilson Hotels. The business I'd been excluded from, the one they tried to steal from me, was now mine. My grandfather signed legal documents transferring his remaining rights to me, finally putting Wilson Hotels entirely in my name. My parents faced criminal charges for financial fraud. After a 6-month trial, they were both convicted and sentenced to 5 years in prison. The judge also ordered them to pay restitution, though we all knew most of the money was gone forever. Quentin, without their money or influence, was left scrambling. He sent a text, a half-hearted apology, attempting to worm his way back into my good graces. I didn't respond. Some betrayals cut too deep. My grandfather helped me fight for recovery of the trust funds, but most of the $2.5 million was gone, spent on Quentin's lifestyle or hidden offshore. We managed to recover only about $350,000 from accounts the authorities could trace. Still, the hotels were worth far more, not just in monetary value, but in what they represented, a chance to build something honest. Taking over wasn't easy. My father had left behind a mess, shady deals, unpaid staff, and a toxic culture. I walked into Wilson Hotel's headquarters my first official day, not as the overlooked daughter, but as the owner and CEO. Employees who had once avoided eye contact now met my gaze with cautious hope. I implemented immediate changes, paying back wages, establishing a scholarship fund for employees' children, and opening the books for complete transparency. Slowly, trust grew. The hotels began to feel like places where people wanted to work, not just had to. 6 months later, I sat with my grandfather on the rooftop of our flagship hotel, the Atlanta skyline glittering below us. He sipped his whiskey, a quiet smile on his face. "You know," he said, "I always knew you had it in you." I tilted my head. "Had what?" He leaned back, his eyes warm in the evening light. "The strength to turn their lies into your truth." I laughed softly, the weight of years of doubt finally lifting. He was right. They had tried to erase me, to write me out of my own family story, but all they'd done was show me what I was capable of. I wasn't just surviving their betrayal, I was thriving because of it. As for Quentin, last I heard he'd moved to California, trying to reinvent himself away from the family scandal. We haven't spoken since that day in the office, and I don't expect we ever will. Aunt Vivian and I have grown close. She's now chief legal counsel for Wilson Hotels, and we have dinner together every Sunday with my grandfather. To everyone who's followed my story, thank you. You've walked with me through the hurt, the fight, and the moment I reclaimed my life. If this resonated with you, if it made you feel the sting of betrayal or the fire of fighting back, hit that subscribe button and join us. Every story we share is about facing the truth, reclaiming what's yours, and building something better from the ashes of what was taken from you. Keep carving your own path, and I'll see you next time. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.